Welcome everybody. I'm Charlotte. I haven't met some of you, but wanted to say hi. I'm the content and program manager at Go Well, and I help organise these events. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to you guys for responding and showing your interest. I do apologise if you can hear screaming. It's not the best time for me to be at home doing a chat, but I first of all, just wanted to welcome you all, and just a quick reminder, this presentation was an idea of Bo, who is here with us, and we really do welcome, thank you, Bo, first and foremost. I wanted to say we are more than happy to take requests and ideas for other types of subjects, so please do email through any ideas of things you'd like to know more about. We're more than happy to try and put together something to assist and support all of you. So please do get in touch. The same goes for if you'd like us to run one of these presentations within your workspace. We're really open to that as well. So feel free to reach out to me. I'll be emailing you through the slide deck at the end of the presentation. So you'll have my contact details, and just wanted to let you know we will be recording it, just for a few people who haven't been able to attend who'd like to see the presentation. So we'll record it, and I'm going to pass you over to Nick to kick things off.
Kia ora, Charlotte. Hi everyone, great to see you all again. So probably doesn't need to go explaining, but if you can sit with your microphones off just when you're not talking, but please feel free to jump in and ask questions as we go. Alex, I'm going to pass it over to Alex, who holds all the knowledge around emissions at Go Well, and so she'll start the presentation. But this is doing this online. Sort of the feedback that we got from people was better to do this one online than in person. We do all prefer to be in person for no other reason really than we've got a lot of free alcohol that we got given that we need to get through. But we're online today, so please we're trying to keep this pretty
you could always send the alcohol out to us,
Yeah, maybe we should find out who's coming and then get your addresses and send it here. But no, we're just trying to create that same kind of atmosphere a little bit online, which is not always as easy everyone understands. But feel free to have your cameras on and be involved and put your hands up and ask questions and stuff as we go. And of course, use the comments function, the chat, as Charlotte's just mentioned. If you don't want to interrupt Alex when she's in her flow, feel free to drop some notes in the chat or questions in there. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the agenda today. To explore the challenges of emissions reductions and discuss strategies for reducing emissions in the transport sector. So Bo got talking to us at the last event, I think it was, or I might have contacted Charlotte directly, but a bit about that challenge of flights, and especially for Bo's work, she, the relationship's really critical, and with a lot of her suppliers being overseas, there's a real tension there between emissions attributed to flying to sea suppliers, and a lot of people have that same challenge with clients. We do, right? And there's no substitute for being in person, as I've kind of alluded to in terms of even just this event tonight. So it sort of started from there, but emissions from flights, it kind of expanded into emissions from travel and freight and transport. So that we sort of expanded it a bit more than just sort of personal flights to sort of cover a bit more of that. And Alex will speak to that in more detail in a moment. You can read the agenda there. And we've been through the housekeeping pieces. And I just see a note there. Oh, cool. That's all good. So I've got another note here to thank Bo for suggesting this one, but I think we've thanked you enough now, Bo. Go Well Together, just a reminder of what this is all about. It's about, it's that famous quote that sums it all up, really. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go together, go far, go together. So we're trying to bring together all these fantastic people we get to work with in isolation somewhat in the consulting work we do. And so many of you have got the same vision for the future, the same values, the same belief that businesses should be part of the solutions, not part of the problems, et cetera, et cetera. And so just really trying to foster those relationships and foster that collaboration and amongst yourselves. So I guess, again, I encourage you to connect with each other. Feel free to reach out to us if you want to say, hey, can someone pass me someone else's email or whatever, and we can be the connector if that helps. But yeah, we're all in this together, right? We're all trying to reduce emissions. We're all trying to get to a place of being circular. We're all trying to make sure there's nothing, you know, terrible going on in our supply chains. So yeah, share those challenges. It'll be really beneficial. Paul, a little bit maybe just about us and what's been happening. We had our second Beyond the Basics course. A big part of the work we do is educating and upskilling and improving the confidence and capabilities of people around sustainability, right? And so individuals and organizations can engage with these big complex challenges and challenging conversations confidently and competently. So the course allows us to kind of dive deeper into that. With all the business we work with and those on this call who have been through our any of our processes will know that we try and drip feed some stuff in and give some information around what the science is telling us, and information around what mapping emissions looks like, and information around what mapping your supply chain looks like. But that's always kind of you know, with the tension of time and trying to keep things moving for people, and we've got a lot to cover in terms of the projects and stuff we deliver. So the course allows us to take some time to take people deeper and really help them understand kind of the history of sustainability and what the science is telling us around our planetary boundaries, and you know what we're doing to the environment, and to ourselves, and then why therefore we need to change how we do business and how our economy works, and then the frameworks and stuff that are out there. It's not just us sitting here piping this. There's a big, you know, movement globally, and there's lots of great work being done all around the world. And so that course allows us to pass on that knowledge and allow people to feel much more confident in their own knowledge, and really be part of these big conversations, I guess. So we've got our next one coming up. We're running it again, and it will again be online only. So just follow that link, or go onto our website and under services, go to courses, and you can follow the link there. We'll just quickly skip forward a slide because the next one is just a discount offer for the course. So early bird course, pretty standard thing, but yep, trying to get people in early helps us with our planning, etc. as well. But obviously, yeah, trying to give people a bit of a discount during some challenging times at the moment for a lot of people in terms of budget cuts, etc. So 30% off that course. Early bird 30 is the code. Back to our update, just promoting Plastic Free July. Plastic Free July has had a huge impact on my life, and I know a lot of people on this call as well. So it is happening at the moment. I think it's about the 10th or 11th year that they've been doing it. And yeah, just a reminder to do those little bits and pieces on your own around not using single-use plastics, right, and reusables. And maybe you can challenge yourself to, I don't know, cut out another piece of plastic from your daily life. Yeah, now's the month to do it. Cool. And then also just sharing that we did the sustainability webinar. When I say we, that's the royal we. It was very much Vanessa who ran all that. If you haven't seen it, it has been recorded. It was a fantastic webinar that just, there's a lot to take on, a lot to take in, but there's a lot happening around the world, and especially in the European markets, but also Asia, also Australia, and also America. And so that really gave a quick overview and download of the legislation that's coming, and businesses need to be aware of. I always sort of say, for those businesses that we're working with, there's Sarah's, Charlotte's just dropped it into the chat for everyone. Those we're working with, we get you well ahead of the legislation. We help you understand why the legislation is coming, and I highly recommend doing that rather than sitting there and waiting to get hit by the stick of government. Get ahead and understand why these legislations are coming, why these laws are coming. It's because of what the science is telling us around climate change, around biodiversity loss, around modern slavery, inequality, etc., etc. So I guess in summary, do our course, understand it, then you get yourself ahead of it, or you know, working with us, doing those strategies or reports, etc., you'll already be in a good position. So I guess for those of you who have done that and are on this call, you probably don't need to stress too much, but yeah, it's a really good resource just to check in on what is happening legally or at that legislative level around the world. That's my quick little monologue at the start. Passing over to you, Alex.
Perfect. So just taking control here. Kia ora, I'm Alex. I'm the emissions consultant at GoWell. I'm sure that I've met most of you either in person or digital, but I will be running a majority of this webinar, and what we're talking about is transport emissions. It is a bit broad. Obviously, this is a huge topic, and there's a whole bunch of different kind of subtopics to talk about here. So, you know, in the try not to go on for hours and hours and hours. We will kind of touch on these different topics, but obviously feel free to ask any more questions, anything that's kind of, you know, more particular to you or your organisation. I will try my best to answer. So we'll start broad. So we're just going to be having a look at the global transport emissions. Mobility is a key part of our lives. You know, we use it every single day, whether that's to get to work, get to education, healthcare, get to, you know, our food, or just day by day errands. So based on that, of course, it is a major contributor to emissions. It takes up about 1/5 of global emissions, and then a huge percentage of that we see is from those road passenger vehicles, which is your, you know, your personal owned vehicles. Second biggest globally being freight, and that's the kind of the road freight and what we're seeing. So kind of road rail, and anything that's kind of on land. Then you've got your aviation. So aviation and freight are combined here. So sorry, passenger and freight are combined here. And then your shipping was just going to be, you know, purely freight on that side. And then a small percentage of railway. Sorry, I included that before in road, but very, very, very small percentage there being railway. And then the other, which is pipelines, which is the transportation of gas and steams and fuels and those sorts of things. Going down a little bit to our little corner of the world. So again, we are seeing a lot of similarities here. So a large portion of our transport emissions come from road emissions. We're seeing a huge climb in this. We saw an 82.2% increase in road transport between 1990 and 2022, which is when we started, you know, releasing reports, or the government started releasing reports, and we were able to see New Zealand's emissions. Although we do see some slight decreases here and there. We saw a 2.6% decrease between transport postal emissions. So that's organisations bringing in more electric vehicles, possibly shifting more to, you know, rail or larger coastal shipping. We also, honourable mention, we had the NZ Clean Car Rebate. So we saw a huge, strong uptake of this. The scheme was estimated that it was going to reduce 230% more emissions than it was estimated to emit. So when the planning kind of came in, sorry, my computer. Am I still here? Is that all good? I might need to wiggle my mouse. It doesn't think I'm here, so it almost shut me down, which it shouldn't be doing. Cool. All right, let me get back into my flow. So if we were going to continue with that Clean Car Rebate, we would have potentially seen that 230% emission reduction or higher emission reduction than what was estimated. But of course, we saw that abolished before we could get to the 2025. We haven't seen any of the new kind of statistics coming out about how much decrease we are going to see since that has been abolished. But you know, obviously with that big chunk of money that was helping people, is massive. So that is that huge chunk there. But in saying that, we have got the combination between passenger and freight in our way of reporting, and then the rest of it coming from that domestic aviation. Alrighty. So in talking about freight, oopsie. At the moment, we see the Climate Change Commission. They've got a can't quite remember the correct words for it, but they've got they're publishing a proposal that they're putting out to start to include your international shipping and aviation emissions in the global, the New Zealand emissions scheme, so our emissions inventory. At the moment, they are excluded. So all domestic shipping from aviation is excluded. It's currently up for consultation, which is the word I was looking for before. So everyone can kind of have their say on that now. The Climate Change Commission's recommendation at this kind of early stage is to include it, so have that included. There is international efforts to address these emissions, but it's just, that's a very, very hard task, let alone New Zealand looking into their own aviation emissions and dealing with that, like in our own backyard, having some sort of global kind of power over that, kind of sway these emissions. Just you can imagine that is a very, very, very hard task. If we were to include these emissions into our inventory, that means that we would also be setting reduction targets against these emissions too, which means that we would be playing a lot more of an active role of bringing down, the global emissions to what we want to see, which is under the 1.5. If it is decided that we want to include these aviation emissions, it would then be the next steps as to how we're going to measure it, how it's going to be included, what sort of structure we'd be seeing, and then how those targets would be set. There are a lot of countries, states that are already voluntarily including these aviation emissions. We see the European Union, United Kingdom, and United States are supporting these goals by setting their own domestic targets, and they're putting in place policies to achieve these. These policies do rely quite heavily on the kind of uptake of sustainable aviation fuel. It is quite a hard emission to just kind of, just decrease because of activity alone, because it has got, you haven't got that direct control over who's flying, who's shipping, who's kind of buying what. The EU, and we're using them as a bit of a case study, they're actually using their ETS to reduce these emissions. So a portion of it is really just going to be going through their own ETS. They have got operational measures. They're modernising and improving air traffic management technologies, procedures and systems. And that's the only kind of operational way, aside from waiting for those kind of sustainable fuels to come out and be, a lot more active in the aviation. Cool. So just talking about those shifts to those alternative fuels, they are kind of the golden egg in this scenario. So these include green methanol or ammonia for shipping, and sustainable aviation fuel. So they're often generated from plant or animal material or electricity. There is a lot of research going into these sorts of fuels. There was a sustainable aviation group that was put together in 2022, and then since then, correct me if anyone's seen anything, but they have not done any sort of updates or anything since that forming of the group in 2022. So I suppose it's kind of a wait and see what's happening with that one. Cool. Alrighty. So challenges. Any emission source comes with its own set of challenges. Passenger being the first one that we're going to focus on, and that one that was very large up in that graph that we did see. So largest emission source comes from our road vehicles. So we all know kind of the attitude that New Zealanders do have towards their cars. We have massive kind of rush hour issues that we seem to all complain about, but no one really seems to do anything about. So we all drive on the motorways at the exact same time, and we do that twice a day, getting to and from work. And we hate it. We hate every second of it. We are notoriously anti-public transport. I can't bring up a bus or a train without at least someone starting to whinge about it. Some of it is totally valid. Some of it's like, you're just flogging a dead horse at this point. We love our utes. We love our big cars. We love anything that kind of connects us to our rural roots. We have a small spread out population on a very large landmass. So driving through all of those rural places to go and visit our friends in whānau or places that we haven't seen before. We live in remote locations. Our towns and cities, this one is a point that is often spoke about if anyone's been to the Climate Change and Business Conference. So talking about those 15-minute cities and how we can better design our cities so that we don't have to use cars. At the moment, a lot of our towns and cities have been designed around the cars and around our roads. So then trying to kind of change that now is proving to be a very hard task. And just to prove the point, as what I said before, strong personal connections and a sense of identity associated with our cars. So we are, if anyone has sons or brothers, a lot of them are very much motorheads, car heads. My partner himself, like, really is too, obsessed with the Formula One. So it is ingrained in us. What we are going to need to see to really start to reduce these emissions is building efficient public transport, safe cycleways, walkways, which is going to reduce our reliance on cars. Also building that relationship that has been broken down from, you know, the public transport and kind of getting through those barriers. Of course, the uptake of green vehicles and those sorts of things has had a huge improvement, but it's not something that every single one of us has got the option to choose or to, you know, to use. So that public transport is really the easiest and most kind of effective way for all of us to at least get out of our cars every once in a while. Cool. Alrighty. So our flights, domestic aviation accounts for about 6.3% of the emissions. I hope that matches the graphic above what we spoke about. So again, kind of talking about the same things here. So where we can't drive to, we fly to. We're an island nation. We love international travel. We all do. We're really big on EUs, gap years, and those sorts of things, which is fantastic. We have a high number of migrants, and they're often wanting to stay connected to their family. So, you know, traveling to and from, especially after that kind of COVID, we did see a huge decrease in transport emissions. We were expecting to see a massive increase of people wanting to get out and about and to see those families that they haven't seen in a long time. Tourism is massive here, so we're really huge on our tourism for bringing in kind of money into our economy. So you know, we're pushing that. We're pushing people to travel around. There's campaigns to, you know, go out and explore our backyard and fly to places, see places that we haven't maybe been, just to kind of pump up that tourism and help the economy there. Small spread out nation. If we can't fly there, if we can't drive there, we're going to fly there. Domestic flights are relatively cheap. You can snag a deal, especially if you book in advance. A lot of the times it is just far too tempting. You know, why would you spend a day and a night possibly driving down to Wellington when you could get down there for $80 on a flight? And we don't have those kind of adequate rail systems to get us to and from. There is trains out there. Again, they don't have the best reliability or, you know, again, they're not trusted too much by the public. The train, there is a train that takes us down to Wellington, but I don't often hear people ever taking or choosing that option or talking about that option. Cool. Freight. Now, freight is another one that is very tricky. I find, you know, passenger vehicles and the flights, it is kind of that behaviour change as well as having those alternative methods. Whereas freight, we are that island. We want to ship things in. We want to ship things out. We only have the option to use kind of air or sea. When we do opt for going for the sea, that is technically the most sustainable option that we could at that time. And the emissions that come from that, there's not a lot of wiggle room around that. So, you know, we have to use alternative methods to kind of look at this freight. So second largest source of emissions is from the vehicles, primarily trucks, so trucking things around. You know, we do have a lot of large, heavy vehicles on our roads. Anyone that's road tripped around New Zealand is going to see this. We don't have adequate rail systems. We don't have a lot of rail systems going to those kind of coastal towns. We've got one going up and down. and a few going side to side, but not enough to kind of transport our freight around, which is where those trucks and those vans are going to jump in. We're not big enough to have coastal shipping that goes down from, you know, A to B, such as you see in Australia. So it is going to go on that truck or that van and go across onto the ferry and keep on driving all the way down. We do have a lot of time-sensitive exports that do need to travel fast and refrigerated, which is where a huge chunk of those emissions are going to come from. And yeah, decarbonizing our freight system is going to be that shift to the cleaner vehicles, different fuel types. As I said before, it is going to be hard to kind of just reduce down that operational because we are, you know, shipping things around, moving things around, and we do have to rely on our trucks and our vans to get from A to B. These are going to be the more challenging. There is not that many viable alternatives currently available. Electric vans, fantastic. We see those around, but when we're talking of those kind of bigger vehicles, we are kind of moving into that now. So, you know, the first hydrogen trucks are being trialed around Auckland. So it is a bit of a waiting game for that one too, and kind of pushing for it, asking for more, trying to speed up that pace as much as we can, you know, voting with our dollar or what our business does. Oh, alrighty. So how do Kiwis keep moving? Well, reducing down our footprint. It's a problem that has a lot of variability, so it depends on where you live, it depends on your stakeholders, and of course it depends on your money. So the easiest way to reduce emissions is to throw some money at it, throw some cash at it, go and buy an e-car is the fastest way you're going to reduce it down. This framework is global, so I'm hoping that anyone has kind of seen this or has seen something that is fairly similar to it. This one is particularly in terms of freight, but the same thing goes for any sort of kind of major issue or kind of problem that you're trying to solve when you're reducing your emissions. So first we've got is avoid, so just avoiding the unnecessary travel altogether. You know, not taking that flight, not taking that big road trip, maybe planning, you know, planning it at a different time, different way, jumping on a call instead of traveling to a destination. So just avoid it completely. Of course, you're going to avoid those emissions. Moving into your shift, so shifting into more sustainable mode. So maybe instead of flying, you decide to take the rail down to Wellington. Great example. And then improve. So improving the way that vehicle is run. So improving the you know, the efficiency, how you're going to drive to and from places, how, you know, if you've already shifted to an electric or a plug-in hybrid, then using the way that that's charged, you know, renewable energy. So you've got a complete carbon zero or net zero car. So avoid, shift, improve. Take these and apply these to kind of anything that you've seen, any sort of emissions. So, you know, the fastest way is to completely avoid. If you can't avoid it and you have to do it, then you've got that kind of shift as to how you can change it, what more you can do. It does take a bit of planning. So, of course, it's going to take longer for you to get from A to B if you're on a railway than if you're on a plane. So kind of planning that into how you do things. And then improving, which is a constant. You are constantly going to be improving on and on. You know, as you reduce down your emissions, then you're setting a new benchmark for yourself, which you're then going to continue to improve, which is what we hope, of course. Oh, alrighty. Fuel-based solutions. I do talk about it a lot during this webinar. It is kind of seen as, or it is the way that we have been able to access, you know, a faster and easier way to kind of reduce down those emissions, to switching it out. So primarily, we're still seeing a lot of battery-powered and electric vehicles. ERoad has kind of live data on this. It's a webinar with Our Climate Business, where Vincent interviews the CEO, which I cannot remember his name from, ERoad, and he's talking about, you know, how we're seeing, you know, the stats of how we're seeing those EVs and they're coming through on the system. Although we are now seeing a drop in new EVs due to the clean car rebate, just another little point there. So it is going to slow down. We saw a lot of EVs come in. So I think we saw like over, by I think 2021, they had issued about like 200,000 clean car rebates. Like it was a lot. We were seeing a lot of uptake from that, which is now massively going to slow down. The next kind of fuel that we're seeing coming through is that hydrogen and this kind of alternative fuels. H.W. Richardson is kind of the key game maker in these alternative fuels, with the hydrogen fuel. They have a lot about it up on their website if anyone's interested in going and having a look. I think that's a good place to kind of start to investigate what hydrogen within that kind of freight and heavy vehicle is looking like. And then prioritizing when you're not kind of relying on that clean fuel, the fuel that you've already got, you can prioritize kind of transport projects with the lowest carbon footprint. So having these kind of fleet policy that if there was a car, you're keeping it alive, keeping it clean running for as long as you can. And then when that car is to be upgraded, what are the alternate cars you could look at, whether it be a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid, or, if you can, preferably an EV. Government commitment to these fuel-based solutions is just to support the uptake of low carbon liquid fuels by implementing a sustainable aviation fuel mandate and sustainable biofuels obligation. Yeah, I mean, as I said before, with the sustainable aviation. Oh, Bo, do you have a question? Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, it sort of crosses my mind here to ask the question for a definition of sustainable aviation fuel or sustainable fuel options. What is it, sustainable aviation fuel?
So I think I did mention it. Just let me jump back. Where did I go? Fuel, flights. Challenges. So green, I can't remember these off the top of my head. I'm not an expert in sustainable aviation fuels. So you'll be seeing green methanol or ammonia. These are used for shipping. In flights, like passenger flights, I'm not too sure off the top of my head. But they are still kind of a fuel type that you would be using in the vessel, such as like kind of a biofuel.
And it still comes from fossil fuel?
Not necessarily. Sorry, Alex, can't resist jumping in here. There's variations and there's blends as well, but a lot of it is plant-based, and that brings a lot of challenges around land use to then grow the corn or the sugar or whatever else to then make the ethanol, typically to then go into these low, what are they called, low emission fuels or whatever. So yeah, there's lots of stuff going. You can imagine the amount of money that's going in to try and find solutions to this, right? And there's lots of stuff around using waste products and trying to use that, waste oils, waste bits and pieces, and using technology around what I don't understand it, to be honest, but microbes and stuff could create. So it kind of captures all of that. These kind of low carbon fuels it's quite a broad term to cover quite a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of intricacy in there in terms of how much better they are. Yes, in terms of the emissions, but in terms of land use, etc.
Yeah,
I'm just going to jump in.
Yep.
I'm just going to jump in, sorry, and just say, like, a couple of weeks ago, Air New Zealand received its first sort of bulk order of 500,000 litres of sustainable aviation fuel, and that was made using used cooking oil, which is, they say it's used cooking oil, but it was supplied and blended by ExxonMobil, so still sort of supporting the fossil fuel companies, but made from an alternative fuel source.
And would the passenger feel any different, or is it a different experience, or did they trial it in passenger aircrafts, or what happened?
Yeah, so I'm guessing they've trialed it, otherwise they wouldn't have done such a big bulk order. but and the passenger experience should be exactly the same. Whether they have to adapt the aircraft will be another story for ongoing. Like it might, I don't know, might have different bits left over or something. So it could be something that long term they haven't quite figured that out yet. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, because it's literally just happened.
They are testing it on short flights, like they haven't done anything sort of massive long haul, but the tests have been on kind of short, small, like domestic flights in Europe.
And would we as passenger have an option? Would it be visible to us as a passenger to say, okay, I want to go on that flight because it's using sustainable fuel?
I don't know, actually. That's a very good point. And whether Air New Zealand will make that a choice, whether they'll make it like put a little symbol or something so I don't, as far as I know, they haven't made it visible to the public yet, but who knows what they'll bring in, or the marketing people will bring in going forward.
You run the risk of people kind of being really negative to it and everyone opting to not use it at all. I suppose that there is that kind of negative connotation of it being, different or something new, or people just being kind of that anti-change, whether or not it just kind of starts to get seeped in without us knowing, it's to not kind of cause a commotion, or whether they really promo it.
Could have the opposite effect. I'll be in that flight.
You'd pay double, right?
Yeah.
They will definitely capture it in their reporting. So they report on their emissions and everything. So they definitely capture and talk about it there. But good points by Alex and Ness, whether it's a good marketing sales thing, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Cool. Okay, so jumping out of kind of passenger and then talking a little bit more about your kind of logistics and what you can do there, again relying heavily on your different kind of fuel types, but what actually can you do is in more of that kind of avoid or lessen the load. There are a lot of strategies out there, organizations that can kind of optimize fleet. And you're talking kind of the big players, of course, they have got kind of these inbuilt fleet optimization and those sorts of things happening all the time. When we're talking more about kind of your smaller organization, you do lose a little bit of a level of control there. So what can you do with those bits of control that are left? Or genuinely what you're just buying in your day-to-day. So the weight of the package does make a huge difference. So when you're calculating the emissions from freight, you do just times the weight by the distance. So anytime you can kind of lighten that load, whether you choose to go for plastic packaging rather than glass packaging. Glass obviously weighs a lot more in terms of emissions. There's been the argument of kind of glass versus plastic in terms of the end of life. But there's always going to be those kind of counter. Another one that we did start to see a little bit of this happen in COVID times, which just is fantastic. And I don't think the upkeep had happened much after that when everyone went out on their own again, but shared shipping with other New Zealand companies that are shipping from the same destinations. They may be your competitors, they may be someone that's in the same kind of area as what you guys are doing, what your organization is doing, but allowing to have those larger shipments coming from different destinations if you are combining and sharing, a coastal, or not a coastal, sorry, a sea tanker. It's going to be able to give you a lot more freedom as to how you ship that item, and possibly get more over and then share that cost with another organization. Less frequent shipping per year. So if you've got less time out there, shipping it over less and then kind of storing it over here to reduce that freight load down. And then kind of pushing for those efficient railways across the country. So, using your voice, advocating for these sorts of things. It does come down to whether or not the government sees it as a kind of a viable place to, put their efforts. But if we're asking for it, then, it's going to help out with the cause. What the government has committed to so far, so providing funding, which is great because the other one was just support. or investigation. So providing funding to support the freight sector to purchase zero and low emission trucks. So great example of that was, the shipping of, the NZ Post hydrogen kind of pilot. Cool. Individuals. So what can we do kind of traveling to and from, getting about? You may have heard of the congestion pricing, which again, I can imagine is going to be very controversial. But at the end of the day, that is more money that is coming into the system to kind of help change the transport industry. It is going to come down to money at the end of the day, especially with the way that New Zealand is now. A lot of organisations, a lot of places are, struggling, including the government and government agencies. So more money that is coming into the system. I'd love to hear about what you guys think about the congestion charge, or what, how you could see that happening, spreading out and, charging people for driving to and from work during that rush hour or heavy time of traffic. Would be the same as if we were to, use a tunnel to avoid or quicken our trip to work. So if anyone has any thoughts on that, please do let me know. Reducing the reliance on cars, supporting people to work, cycle, use public transport, mentioned before. It's a fantastic way to get people out of cars if they know that they can get from A to B on a reliable, cheaper option. That would be, fantastic. I did just see today that the push for funded public transport was heard by one of our lovely men in government, and so he's committed to capping the total spend for an individual using public transport, so they shouldn't be paying more than $50 per week, which is a start. Brisbane has heard the calls of their people, and they're going to be trialing 50-cent trips, which is, it's a little bit ahead of what we're up to, but at least we've, the voices have been heard. Again, pushing for that high capacity, high quality public transport. So something that we know is going to get us from A to B. Talking about my transport emissions, which is very naughty. I did just get back from Japan. Kiwis love to travel. It's my vice. But what I did learn in Japan was, to be expected, the public transport there was fantastic. We used the bullet train to get from A to B. I got from Tokyo to Kyoto in like 2 hours. It was fantastic. It was interesting. It felt like I was on something that was like meant for tourists, and I was seeing the sights and seeing parts of the countryside that I would never see otherwise, or if I was on, a plane. So setting that as kind of our goal would be amazing. So using the public transport everyone there uses the public transport. They trust it. They know it's going to get them from A to B. Cool. So a little bit more on kind of individual travel in kind of your business aspect. So setting targets for transport in your value chain. So making sure you're including, if you are measuring your emissions or looking at your emissions or sustainability in your organization, making sure that you're looking at all points of travel and transport in that value chain, including your staff commuting. Is a big one. So, having that kind of control or eyes over what your staff is doing and how you can help them. And setting up carbon caps, which is maybe something I need to do in my personal life, but a carbon cap for how much travel I'm allowed to do in a year, or, your organization is allowed to do in a year, so that you are steadily decreasing that travel over time and kind of, lowering the roof each year to see that kind of steady reduction. Government commitments, only zero emission public transport buses to be purchased by 2025. Great, not fantastic, not too impressed by that one at all. I feel like, once we started having buses out there on the road, e-buses that were working, it should have been the go straight from there. Those buses are great, but you look at them and they're empty. How are we going to get people in those buses and using those electric buses? Cool. Alrighty. So we're getting to the end now. This is a case study that I did come across while listening to a TED Talk. It was from forgive me if I butcher this, Maersk. We see the containers. I've seen the containers in ports of Auckland. Never pronounced it out loud, always read it in my head. But their previous CEO, I don't know too much about the new CEO. I hope he's continuing all the good work. But the previous CEO was the CEO of Siemens and Maersk. And both of what those organizations were doing were absolutely fantastic. So they have a comprehensive ESG strategy, and they're committed to a net zero by 2050, and then they brought that down to 2040. And what they're doing in the kind of aviation fuel, shipping fuel, is kind of setting the standard, I think, or kind of making it the new normal. I do just want to do a little caveat that the music in this video is really loud. So if everyone just wants to maybe turn their radio it's late. I'm starting to lose it right at the end though, but that's okay. Turn the sound down in case it blasts. Silence, it's even better.
It's not playing.
Okay, so it is just music, so it doesn't matter if that's not playing. It did play really loud for me at the start, so I'm glad you guys couldn't hear it. What I was really interested in when I watched this was the world's first container ship running on that green methanol, and then after they kind of trialed that and then kind of pushing for it a lot more, even within that kind of year, which I think is fantastic. So kind of proving that it can be done, and we're talking about containers, large, heavy containers. One thing about sustainable aviation fuel is you do carry it on board with you, I believe. So it is fantastic for kind of your shipping containers, your tankers, and vessels that can take really high weights, which is why it'd be fantastic to see this across more of that kind of water-based transportation rather than your aviation. The more organizations that kind of buy into this and start using this, the lower the price of it is going to be. At the moment, it is about 4 times higher than your kind of fossil fuel-based fuel. So if we start to see a lot more uptake, a lot more production of the stuff, then it's going to make it a lot more cheaper, so that we shouldn't get flights that are coming through as 4 times more expensive because of the sustainable aviation fuel used. But do feel free to jump in and have a look at this company. I think that they're still doing pretty well. The CEO that was kind of in charge of this did move on, maybe retired, maybe he was ready. But yeah, I think they have a lot of commitments, and although you will see organizations that are kind of aligned with that 1.5 degree pathway, what you really want to look at is whether they're kind of meeting those targets along the way, which this organization is, which is why I feel happy to use them as a case study.
I just wanted to jump in here and say Maersk are doing amazing stuff. Like they've done things like they've donated a ship to help clean up the big plastic patch up in the Pacific. Yeah. So they've done incredible stuff from a sustainability point of view. Most shipping lines have committed huge huge dedications and money towards becoming more sustainable and using more sustainable fuel and things like that. Where the issue we have is a lot of the time it's freight forwarders. and it's those people that organise the freight between you as a company and the shipping line. So often businesses, especially in New Zealand, don't get the choice of what shipping line they're going to use, which makes it even a bit more difficult for us, especially in New Zealand. So I guess this is where the consumer pressure comes in, and as brands speaking to your freight forwarders and really demanding some data around what they're doing around sustainability, but also pressurizing them to say, no, we only want to use companies or freight companies that have got climate commitments or are meeting certain targets. So it really comes into your due diligence process around freight and what companies you're using within your business.
Absolutely. Just another great point as to why you cannot ignore kind of the value chain and what's going on up and down there. Thank you, Ness. Cool. Alrighty. So last little quote, trying to make it not end on such a negative. You know, we all are so connected by the environment. So I loved this quote from Lady Bird Johnson. The environment is where we all meet, where all of us have a mutual interest, and it is the one thing all of us share. I felt that quote was quite good as well for the transport sector, because we do use transport to go into those environmental places, and we can't dismiss the fact that, you know, it's not, you know, pure evil, but what we can do around it and kind of the ways we can change is where we're going to have an impact. Cool. Alrighty, so I've kind of seen the chat here and there. I'm not too sure if there was any additional questions, whether Nick wanted to kind of jump in and Nick or Charlotte debrief me as to what's been going on in the chat. If anyone had any comments, thoughts.
Yes, I've been answering a few of the questions as we go. I might go back up. Alice has just sort of mentioned that, yeah, Maersk, I think that is how you say it, Alex, by the way, Maersk, has a great commitment, but as an importer, they seem to only offer limited schedules to New Zealand. Also dropped the New Zealand Coastal Service. Yeah, it's a real challenge, as Alex was kind of touching on. We're tiny little market at the bottom of the world, right? And we saw this again in COVID. A lot of the ships just weren't coming to us because it's like, oh, what's the point driving out of the way to drop that stuff off? So that is a real challenge. And, you know, often what we see happening globally is not reflected here in New Zealand when it comes to the big shipping companies. And we have some of the most expensive shipping lanes in the world as well, right? To get from our ports, you know, Lyttelton, Wellington, Auckland, etc., to the big markets. We've got to cover a lot of ocean. So it's just such a common challenge for all the New Zealand businesses we work with. Anyone who's exporting or importing, really, that's such a challenge, right? Oh yeah, FYI, I did your tool as I was listening to Alex then. Bo and I come out as personal overshoot day is 24th of August. You know, it's interested, and if everyone lived like me with 1.5 Earths. So I hope that's better than others, but it sounds bad. So, and this question here, Bo asked about, is hydrogen a better option for heavy vehicles then? Yeah, big question, as I say, and it kind of depends a little on who you talk to, but basically you need electricity to make hydrogen, so why not just put electricity straight into the vehicle? But it takes a long time to charge up vehicles, especially big trucks, like hours and hours and hours, and those are hours that they could be on the road earning money driving. So hydrogen, you fuel up pretty much as quickly as petrol or diesel, so it's only a few minutes, and then they're back on the road. So there's that real trade-off, and then there's also that argument around the weight and of battery-powered vehicles being very heavy versus hydrogen.
And possibly also the recycling or the reuse of the batteries, you know, and where they come from is a big story.
That's another thing again. Yeah, that's another thing again around, you know, this whole electrification of everything, basically, and renewable energy of everything, is the mining of the rare earth metals and the discarding of them at the end of their life. And that for us is that whole circular economy thing, right? Like we can't just take the same linear sort of thinking that fossil fuels has taken to the you know, evolution of our energy system. We have to think about keeping it going around, and you just think about how much e-waste is thrown away every year, and we know that New Zealand is one of the worst for that globally per person. They talk about urban mining, or which is basically mining landfills. Just think how many valuable resources in our landfills, and sort of bringing this circular economy thinking to this new industry and this big transformation. But you're totally right. There's a good thing that Alex shared around the different feedstocks into the biofuels.
Would you say that in regards to transport, since we're talking about transport here, is aviation the worst or the biggest challenge to sort of solve with the fuel? And what, like our airline, Air New Zealand, our national airline, I mean, I've read the sustainability report. There's other airlines internationally, like United actually has quite an interesting approach to it. So has Lufthansa. Is there a place where they sort of share their research and to move faster as a collaboration?
Good question. I'd hope so. I'd really
You'd
hope so. Something we talk about all the time. But look, again, we're in this historic system of competition and trade secrets and IP and all that kind of stuff. So they see it a lot as a competitive advantage, right? So I don't know what's happening at that global level around aviation fuel. From what I've seen of Air New Zealand, they seem to be pretty collaborative and open about it. But that could, I don't know. I don't know enough, to be honest, Bo. I don't know if anyone else has got a comment on that.
So if you would have to fly in freight, or you would have to ship in freight, what is there an answer to what is more sustainable than
shipping,
one method or the other?
Yeah, shipping's
Large
vastly
ships.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You go, Alex.
the larger the tanker, I mean, essentially the more stock that is on it, that's kind of divided by the trip, which is why, when you have a flight and you look at the emissions, a first class ticket is a lot higher in emissions than an economy ticket. But yeah, shipping via large tankers is your most sustainable option for any freight.
Even if they burn fossil fuel and all the rest of it, it's still most sustainable. Okay.
Yeah, most sustainable that we have at this time. And a lot of them, they're all kind of a lot more fossil fuel based, but they're traveling at the kind of that lower speed with a lot more stock on the vessel.
Okay.
It'd be cool to understand from like Ports of Auckland if they're looking to work towards trucks that pick up their containers, and if they can work on electric. So the transport companies can work on electric trucks if they'd get like priority pickups or anything, because that's another huge part is trucks. Every container that comes in is going to be a truck that picks it up.
Yeah, and from what I understand from people I've spoken to in shipping and in rail, is that a lot of it comes down to it's the freight forwarder that books most of that transport, and it's all down to demand from customers apparently on how quickly they need the goods. So again, it's that conversation to have with freight forwarders around how can we get more of our containers moved through the country via rail rather than via truck, and then obviously if more trucks are getting made that are hydrogen or EV powered, how can we prioritize those over others? But yeah, it's a huge issue. I mean, we've all been on the motorway stuck behind truck after truck after truck, especially when the rail line is right there. And it's from what I've spoken to the guys at Kiwi Rail, it comes down to freight forwarders and the people who book them. So yeah, it's all about customer pressure and the voice you guys have as businesses, and using that to try and give a little bit more pressure to those freight forwarding companies who have had an easy ride for a long time.
Yes, I agree. Thanks, Vanessa.
Just quickly acknowledging Will dropped that link in there. I've not seen them, Will, before. RSB, who developed the most robust and credible self-proclaimed credible standard for the reproduction of fuels in the European Union, ensuring that fuel production can demonstrate real greenhouse gas emission reductions while not contributing to issues like deforestation, global hunger, and ecological breakdown. So that's talking to that point before about biological fuels or sustainable fuels, but that's interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Will. The other thing I just want to quickly raise, and I think is often missed in this conversation, is we're not just talking about emissions here, we're talking about pollution, like air pollution. Air pollution is a massive cause of health issues and premature death around the world. And here in New Zealand, I was just doing a quick search on it because I've seen some reports have come out. And one here is saying that in 2016, human-made air pollution in New Zealand resulted in an estimated 3,317 premature deaths in people aged 30 plus. Another 13,000 hospitalizations. That's far greater than the deaths from road deaths, for example, right? And think how much focus we have on that. So as well as bringing down emissions and reducing impacts on climate change, you're also improving air quality, outcomes. And being a cyclist, cycling behind a big diesel truck or bus is horrific. And so I'm loving getting behind an electric bus. It feels a lot better. So I think it's important to acknowledge that the two go hand in hand, really, and there's such a focus on emissions and climate change, as there should be, but for some reason air pollution kind of goes a bit under the radar, I guess.
Only in New Zealand, though. In Asian countries and big cities, it's a big problem, and it's very much publicized. It's just in New Zealand because, well, I guess we have pretty clean air in comparison. But I agree with you. So, I mean, apart from like being a business which imports and exports and which needs to, travel and seeing customers, we've sort of explored the shared shipping. We have also amalgamated our shipments, so it's less frequent, which of course needs more cash flow. So that's the balance of that, because we purchase more stock. And then of course we amalgamate the travel as well. But it's, I'm just sort of asking the question, is there anything else which is obvious which one could do?
Oh, it's tough, Bo. I mean, and we've talked about with you, of course, in the past, the challenge around the glass packaging and the pros and cons of that. The harsh reality is glass is heavier, therefore more emissions from freighting it. But as Alex touched on, there's more consideration than just that, right? So that's one thing that I know there's no immediate solution for. It sounds like you're doing all the stuff in terms of the logistics and good planning and efficiency there. You raise a really good point about that cash flow impact of it. I don't know, Bo. I feel like you're doing so much. Those last wee bits are really, really challenging. I don't know.
The only bit I would probably add in is depending on where you're exporting to, is starting to think about manufacturing in those export markets. And what that would look like, because obviously that's a big research project that has to be undertaken because they want to meet the same ethical and environmental standards that you already have here in New Zealand. But in terms of having to ship stuff around the world, ship it from, like, especially when you've got your ingredients, shipping it to New Zealand, and we are so far away from the rest of the world, what that would look like if you started to manufacture smaller batches for your international clients overseas. And again, it's got pros and cons, but and once you start to establish yourself quite well in another market, that is a consideration to start thinking about as well.
Yeah, I've thought about it. We're not quite there yet, but yes, thank you.
It's a really great point. And I mean, I want to add to that too. Alex, you might know more the stats than I do, but typically it's safe to say that the manufacturing of products is where most of the emissions come from. Transport in a whole life cycle of a product is generally a pretty minuscule amount. It is something we focus on a lot, but when you think about just your products, Bo, just getting the raw materials, getting those, processing them, getting the packaging, the resources and the emissions into making the packaging, then freighting it, and then it going to wherever, recycling, end of life. Often the freight is quite a small percentage of the whole life cycle.
Well, I think we're doing pretty well because we manufacture with a solar-powered manufacturing plant. So that's something which I you know, whatever is in my control and I can actually invest into, I generally do, you know, and go down that path. But
and it's a key challenge for all New Zealand exporters, right? Because we have this problem, you know, overseas markets will be saying, why would you buy something from New Zealand? It's come so far. I know it's a big issue for the likes of wine, for example. Whereas if we can show that the way we farm, the way we produce food is, you know, with solar panels, with renewable energy, without fossil fuel chemicals, and so it's vastly lower emissions in producing and manufacturing, then that's a much better outcome, because, like I say, the freight's kind of a smaller percentage of it. Total.
Yeah, and I guess just looking.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Alice, go.
You go.
I was just going to say ingredients is the other place as well. So where those ingredients are coming from, how they're being made, how they've been grown agriculturally wise, and making sure that all your suppliers are on that same boat as you, because there's also the processing of those ingredients to make them into what you need them to be in the end product as well.
Yeah, so they're all organically certified or wild grown. So all our suppliers are, and then we have. We've got 32 different countries where we source from, but we amalgamated into 8 different points where we ship from. So, you know, that's the sort of work which we have done in the background, but I'm just looking for more to have a bigger, faster impact as, you know, a small company in New Zealand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you do, what you import, Bo, but, you know,
essential oils.
Coffee. Oh, okay, yeah. So we import coffee and tea. And, you know, send it around New Zealand. So there's been a big spotlight recently on like gas emissions, which comes from coffee roasting. So, you know, it's a huge new piece, as well as the importing and everything that goes on with it. So yeah, I think there's a lot of other industries that are trying to work on things. So if you want to chat at all, let me know.
Right.
But at the same time, people still want to consume the product. It's just what the importers and the companies do in the background. So, for example, we know that if we import coffee from Papua New Guinea, it's a lot closer than Brazil, but pricing and everything comes into it. So it's looking at what's close by. Yeah, it's hard.
It is hard. The main thing is that you're thinking about it. You know, you're ahead of a lot of people, that you're even kind of throwing the emissions factor into your procurement decision making. It's not just price, it's not just quality, it's not just, you know, there is emissions is there and is in part of the thinking. And I think that's a huge first step, you know. And then the fact we're even trying now to work out how to get these final last, you know, freight emissions, is an element of it that's like we can't, like, you know, there's literally, until the Maersks of this world have zero carbon fuels, or there's the government, you know, invests in new rail, there's some real challenges. I totally echo what Ness said before. Ask questions and try and align with freight partners and stuff that are progressive and trying to do the right things. But there's a lot that is just out of our control at the moment. But it's probably getting pretty close to a wrap, really. Has anybody else got any final questions or comments? Otherwise, we might wrap this up. Charlotte, I think you're there. You chopped off for a moment, but you're back. Cool.
In and out. Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. It's a great, it's good to get you guys all together and have a chat. And yeah, we want to run more of these down the track. So please do fire through any topics that are of concern, and we'll try and make sure that we can get around to building a presentation to help you. As I said, I'll send out the slide deck tomorrow. There's a bunch of people that missed it, so we will be sending it through to everybody. And if you've got any questions at all, let us know. The link to our course is in there, so please, if you know of anyone that you think should be attending that, send that through to them, because that discount is just till the end of the month. So yeah, that would be wonderful.
I just got to quickly add feedback to this. We'd normally like to do these in person, as we said, and everyone understands why. So just doing it online, we sort of just kept the same time, but swapped it. It sort of just dawned on me a bit as we're sort of going through at this time of the night. Might not necessarily the best time for on screen, and perhaps during the day. So any feedback in terms of the way we deliver these, and whether online at this time is good, or during the day, or shorter snippets. Yeah, we're just constantly looking to try and sort of refine this to best suit as many people as possible. So feel free to share your thoughts on that as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you putting
always
these
love the
together.
face-to-face. I think it is much nicer. I'm sort of, COVID got me really over the screen time. I appreciate that this is easier for many people, and sometimes myself as well.
Yeah, and I think probably a bit of a mixture of both, but definitely we'll be doing as many in person as possible. But mindful that not everyone can travel, and some people live too far away to get to us and stuff. So but anyway, we'll keep doing that. Thank you. Have a fantastic evening. Reach out to us if you've got any questions in the meantime. Always here to help. And like I said at the start, feel free to reach out to each other. There's lots of sort of similarities here and some shared problems. So do keep collaborating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Nice to
much.
see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.